Welcome, deep divers. Ever stop and think that maybe the stories we know best, the ones we've heard maybe, a million times, could still hold some really surprising, even radical truths?
Absolutely. Truths that often get buried maybe under layers of tradition or how institutions interpret them.
Exactly. So today we're doing something a bit different, a deep dive where we try to look past the dogma, the associations people have with the Gospels,
Hmm.
and instead really try to find their pure spiritual heart, their message.
Okay.
Let's unpack this. What if these ancient stories aren't just history or religious rules, but more like a blueprint, a guide for interchange, for living radically differently, and maybe accessible to anyone, really?
That's exactly what we're aiming for. And it's a fascinating goal, I think. What's so compelling is how these teachings, if you approach them not just as religious texts, but as, say, profound spiritual classics,
Right.
they really invite you into this direct, sometimes really transformative encounter with the central figure, Jesus. And that resonates way beyond just one single tradition.
Hmm.
So we're going to carefully explore that core spiritual message, how it's presented in, well, a range of sources we've looked at,
Okay.
which means diving into probably his most revolutionary ideas, wouldn't you say, uncovering the radical inclusivity you find in the parables.
Yeah, the acceptance.
Exactly. And looking hard at those central themes that just keep coming up. Forgiveness, unconditional love, and that really deep self-sacrifice.
So the goal is to kind of strip away the baggage, the historical layers, the interpretations piled on over centuries.
Precisely. To try and re-engage with these spiritual classics
Yeah.
in a way that feels direct, personal, and honestly relevant to you listening right now.
And to really get at that universal feeling, that good news, this transformative idea, we're intentionally not just sticking to the Gospels themselves.
Right, that's key.
Our sources today are more like a carefully chosen tapestry. We're weaving together wisdom from East and West. So we'll be pulling from ancient texts like the Dhammapada, the Tao Te Ching, but also insights from thinkers like Dietrich Bonhoeffer, Erich Fromm, William James.
A real mix.
Yeah, and contemporary guides, too. People like Tara Brach, Eckhart Tolle, Pema Chodron, Neil Donald Walsh, even the anonymous author of the Theologia Germanica.
And the mystics, like St. John of the Cross.
Right, and that amazing narrative in Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha.
So this broad approach, it isn't just, for show. It helps us see how these core principles, the ones so central to the Gospels, actually echo and reappear across so many different paths to wisdom.
It immediately sets up that beyond dogma idea we're going for.
Exactly. It shows how these spiritual truths aren't just locked into one time or culture. They're fundamentally human, universal. They speak to something deep inside all of us.
Okay, so let's dive right in. Head first, maybe, into what many people find one of the toughest, most counterintuitive, but also, incredibly powerful teachings in the Gospels.
Which one are you thinking of?
Loving your enemies. In Luke's Gospel, chapter 6, verses 27 to 28, 32, 36, Jesus just lays it out there. But to you who listen, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for your abusers.
Wow. No mincing words there.
Not at all. And then he immediately calls out our normal human way of thinking, that whole reciprocity thing. He asks, if you love those who love you, what merit is there in that? After all, even sinners love those who love them.
Right. He's basically saying that's easy mode.
Totally. This isn't just a suggestion to be, nice. It's this uncompromising, almost audacious demand for a completely different way of living. It turns our usual ideas about justice, fairness, even self-protection completely upside down.
It really does. It forces you to confront those gut reactions, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The ones that want revenge or resentment or just pulling away when someone's hostile.
Yeah, exactly. Aggression, hatred. Our instinct isn't usually love.
And that's where you see just how radical this teaching is. The crucial thing here, why it hits so hard, is that it's not presented as, a way to get a reward or brownie points with God or even necessarily to change the other person's behavior.
Right. So what's the point then?
It's framed explicitly as an invitation to become children of the Most High, to actively mirror a divine kind of generosity, a compassion that astonishingly extends even to the ungrateful and the evil.
Wow.
And it builds to that incredibly powerful line, be as compassionate as your Father is. So it's not about just acting nice on the outside.
It's about embodying something divine.
Exactly. Embodying a fundamental quality of God. It shifts the whole focus away from following external rules or getting people to like you towards a massive internal transformation.
So compassion becomes who you are, not just what you do sometimes.
Precisely. like this overflowing wellspring inside you that doesn't depend on whether someone else deserves it.
Yeah.
It's an invitation to stretch your capacity for love almost infinitely, beyond personal hurts, beyond perceived wrongs, even beyond real harm.
That kind of love doesn't just tolerate. It actively wants the best for the other person, even if they wish you ill, which is, well, revolutionary.
It absolutely is, and it's liberating in a way. It
Hmm.
disarms the power that hatred might otherwise have over us, no matter how the other person responds.
That's a really key distinction, moving from just action to this inner alchemy. And when you connect this to the bigger picture, you see these incredible echoes, don't you? This radical compassion showing up in other spiritual paths.
Definitely.
Like, think about the Buddhist practice of Tonglen. Teachers like Tara Brue explain it so well. It feels like a profound, active way to transform suffering, moving beyond just yourself to embrace others, mirroring that boundless compassion Jesus talks about.
Yes, Tonglen is a perfect example.
Could you walk us through what it really involves? How does it embody this kind of radical love?
Sure, Tonglen really at its core is about empathetic exchange. It's a courageous, active engagement with suffering, not away from it.
Hmm.
So in the meditation, you actively visualize breathing in the suffering of others. You might picture, say, a family losing their home in a flood, or you might feel the despair of someone caught in addiction.
Or even someone who's angry at you.
Yes, exactly. You feel the fear or pain behind their anger. You actively take that pain, that distress, into yourself.
Hmm.
You let yourself feel its sharpness, its weight, right in your own heart. You have to be willing to sit with that discomfort.
Instead of pushing it away.
Precisely. Then, as you breathe out, you visualize releasing all that suffering into this vast, boundless awareness. You send out care, relief, comfort, wishes for their well-being, their freedom from pain.
So it's not just feeling sorry for them, it's active.
It's very active, a transformative process. Your heart becomes, as they say, a transformer of sorrows. The really visceral way to love those who might be enemies, maybe not because they hurt you directly, but because of the suffering driving them. You embrace their pain, and that cultivates this immense, unconditional compassion that just naturally includes everyone. It builds what they call bodhicitta, the awakened heart, which is boundless.
It's amazing how that mirrors the gospel's call, doesn't it? Actively engaging, not retreating. And William James, in his classic, The Varieties of Religious Experience, he pushes this idea of active, engaged love, too. He contrasts it with a kind of rigid, maybe ritualistic purity that tries to avoid getting messy.
He talks about loving and serving men being paramount.
Yeah, and he suggests that secret retributions somehow always restore divine justice. But the challenging part is when he says it's better that a life should contract many a dirt mark than forfeit usefulness in his efforts to remain unspotted.
That's a powerful line.
It really resonates with the gospel's uncompromising call, doesn't it? Don't prioritize being perfectly clean and separate over actively, even messily, engaging with a hurting world.
So true spiritual growth isn't found in isolation, trying to stay pure.
According to James, no. It's found in participating, even if you get a bit dirty, helping and loving others, especially the struggling, the marginalized, even the hostile ones. The goal isn't pristine isolation, it's a profound usefulness and love towards humanity, making real connections, offering help where it's needed, without judgment.
And building on that idea of love as this active, engaged force, you have Eric Fromm.
Hmm.
In The Art of Loving, which is still such a classic, he gives us this universal framework for understanding that deep, innate drive for connection, the drive that really underpins both the gospel message and practices like Tonglen.
What does he say?
He basically argues that the desire for interpersonal fusion, for connection, is the most powerful striving in man. It's the fundamental passion that literally holds the human race together. Clans, families, societies.
Wow, the most powerful.
That's his claim. And he warns that if this drive fails, it leads straight to insanity or destruction, self-destruction or destroying others. Humanity, he says, couldn't survive a single day without this force of love, this pull towards unity.
So it elevates the gospel's command beyond just a moral rule.
To an existential necessity, a fundamental truth about who we are. It suggests radical love isn't just some lofty ideal, it's actually a survival mechanism for the human spirit, and maybe for civilization itself.
That's a really powerful way to frame it, an existential imperative. And Fromm then makes this really important distinction, doesn't he, between genuine, mature love and what often just passes for it, like superficial stuff or infantile attachments.
Yes, that's crucial. He points out that many people, especially if they're emotionally immature, are driven mainly by the aim To be loved, not to love.
Wanting to receive, not give.
Exactly. They come into relationships with these, well, he calls them fantastic expectations. They want unconditional care, admiration, fulfillment, almost like they're still kids demanding attention.
And they confuse maybe being affectionate or trying to please someone with real love.
Right. And then they get deeply hurt and bitter when their partner doesn't constantly admire them or, makes their own valid claims on life, challenging their self-image.
So how does that connect back to the gospel?
Well, from Sun's point, beautifully lines up with the Gospel's call for a selfless, outward-focused love. True, radical love, the kind Jesus talks about, requires maturity, responsibility, and active commitment to extend yourself even to difficult, challenging, unresponsive people,
It's about moving past that childish need to get love.
and stepping into the mature ability to give love, freely, unconditionally, without expecting something back. That's precisely the generous, unreciprocated love the gospel demands. A massive shift from being self-centered to other-centered, from needing affirmation to giving affirmation.
Okay, our deep dive into the gospel's radical call now leads us into maybe even more challenging territory. This often misunderstood idea, famously put by Dietrich Bonhoeffer in The Cost of Discipleship. When Christ calls a man, he bids him come and die.
Phew, that's a stark phrase.
It really is.
Uh-huh.
And he doesn't mean literal physical death, obviously, but a profound, absolute spiritual one, a death of the ego, a death to self-will.
And Bonhoeffer knew the stakes, writing that in Nazi Germany. He understood real commitment.
Definitely. He explains that real discipleship means consciously giving up worldly attachments, embracing this dying of the old man through a direct, transformative encounter with Christ.
A complete surrender.
Total surrender. Union with his death, which plays out as a daily suffering for his sake. It means letting go of everything that defined our old, comfortable, self-focused, self-ego desires, comforts, attachments to status, stuff, reputation, even our own ideas about how our life should go.
It's a total overhaul of our being.
Yeah.
A choice to shed that self-will and embrace a completely new way of existing, centered on that divine call. Almost like saying, my life isn't my own anymore. So what does that actually mean for someone listening today? It means a complete, probably uncomfortable reorientation, not just, fiddling around the edges of our life.
Right.
But this dying, it isn't the end point. Paradoxically, Bonhoeffer says it's the beginning.
How so?
He argues the cross doesn't meet us at the end of a long, good life as some kind of reward. It meets us right at the start of communion with Christ. It's the initiation rite.
He uses the story of the rich young ruler, right?
Exactly. Jesus tells him to embrace voluntary poverty, not because being poor is good in itself, but as a means to obedience. It's the necessary first step to cut the ties, binding him to the temporary world, so he can fully live the new, boundless life offered in Christ.
So this death is a daily thing, not a one-off event.
It's a daily process, a constant engagement, facing new temptations, suffering anew for Christ's sake, getting wounds and scars that Bonhoeffer calls living tokens of participating in the cross. It's a constant fight against our own desires, our own lusts, a path only for those truly willing to die to their own will, their own control, to follow Christ.
It sounds like a fundamental paradox. Give up everything, gain everything. Die to yourself. Find true life.
That's it exactly, a radical flipping of worldly values.
That sounds incredibly intense. A path demanding huge internal upheaval, total surrender. How does someone navigate that, especially when it feels like a cruel spiritual death, without just falling into despair? And how do these traditions suggest you endure that kind of stripping away?
That's a crucial question.
It raises the point. What does it even mean to encounter the divine in a way that requires such profound internal disruption? St. John of the Cross, in his mystical masterpiece, Dark Night of the Soul, describes a similar, intensely personal, often agonizing process. The dark night is this deep, purgative contemplation.
Precisely. And St. John isn't talking about clinical depression here. He's describing a divine active process where God intentionally draws souls away from the beginner stage, where, they often rely on intellectual meditation, emotional highs in their spiritual life.
The sweetness.
Right, the sweetness. And draws them towards being contemplatives, aiming ultimately for divine union. And this involves a deeply painful negation of self and of all things. The soul gets systematically stripped of its usual affections, its spiritual comforts, its intellectual maps, all attachments to the old ego self.
It sounds terrifying.
It's described that way. The soul feels like it's perishing and melting away in a cruel spiritual death, like Jonah in the whale, utterly lost, abandoned. until eventually there's a spiritual resurrection.
But what's often missed isn't just the pain, but its purpose.
Exactly. It's active, purgative purpose. This intense inner suffering cleanses the natural affections, the desires, even the pleasure you might find in spiritual practices. It leads to what he calls purity and the love of God.
So actions are done purely for God, not for personal gain or feeling good.
Precisely. For God's sake alone. Not for sweetness, satisfaction, or feeling like you're making progress, just pure, selfless desire to please the divine. This profound darkness, though awful at first, is a necessary purification of understanding and will. It leads to a transformation where all thought of self-seeking, self-will is just lost. It's a painful recalibration that refines our love into something utterly selfless, forcing us into naked reliance on grace, moving beyond shallow motives.
That's a much deeper take on the Dark Knight than you usually hear, emphasizing that transformative goal. Hermann Hesse's novel Siddhartha gives us a beautiful story, a narrative version of this inner revolution that so many people connect with.
It really does.
Siddhartha, after all those years of searching intellectual study, ascetic practices, and diving into worldly life, riches, pleasure, he has this profound moment by the river. He finally gets it, viscerally, that lust for the world and riches do not belong to the good things.
He knew it intellectually before, though.
Yeah, as a kid. But only then, after living it, did he experience it in my eyes, in my heart, in my stomach. And what died in him wasn't just a desire. It was, as Hesse puts it, something else from within him, his small, frightened, and proud self.
The ego he'd battled for years.
Exactly. The one that blocked joy, felt fear, kept defeating him spiritually. But now, by the river, that self finally died, simply by him being fully present to the immense suffering it had caused.
And it didn't lead to nothingness.
No, it brought this radical new state. Childlike trust, fearlessness, joy. It was a deeply personal transformation that went beyond any external teachings or rituals. It came from a direct, painful, but ultimately freeing encounter with his own being. He realized the desire to know was often the enemy of real knowing. True wisdom came from that inner death and rebirth into pure presence and acceptance.
And that anonymous mystical text, Theologia Germanica, sheds even more light on this critical problem of self-will. It presents it as the very essence of sin, the total opposite of the divine life, really complementing Bonhoeffer's idea.
How does it frame it?
It contrasts the life of Christ as the noblest and best path, but also the bitterest to nature and selfishness, with a careless life of false freedom, which feels good to the ego, but is ultimately the worst, the most deluded.
Okay. And what's key there?
The absolutely crucial part is its definition of sin. It's not just doing bad things externally. It's desiring or willing anything otherwise than the one perfect good and the one eternal will. Or simply having a will of your own, a separate agenda from the divine.
So self-will itself is the root problem.
That's exactly it. This self-will, this desire for anything apart from God's will, is identified as the root of all evil, lies, fraud, injustice, the fundamental source of all human suffering and separation.
So for a truly godlike man, as the text says,
all thought of self, all self-seeking, all self-will must be utterly lost and surrendered and given over to God, except, what's needed to keep the body alive. True divine freedom, like Christ's, is actually pained by evil and injustice, always striving for harmony, whereas false freedom is this deluded state that pretends to be unmoved by anything, even sin, calling it detachment.
So this deep surrender of self-will is the path to real peace.
It's presented as the ultimate path. It brings a truly content, quiet heart where desires for more or less to live or die, they all become the same. The only lament is the persistence of sin itself. That's true inner peace and alignment.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit now and focus on a concept that really underlies so much spiritual wisdom across all sorts of traditions, radical inclusivity, and that profound, game-changing truth of unity.
A big one.
Conversations with God, those books that struck a chord with so many people, introduces this wisdom with a statement that's both simple and completely revolutionary. We are all one.
Powerful in its simplicity.
Right. The text explains that how advanced any society, any civilization, or even any individual is can be measured directly by how much it moves towards unity, rather than towards separation and duality.
That's a fascinating metric.
Isn't it? I mean, just imagine for a second how different our world would be if we really, truly understood and lived that truth. We constantly think of ourselves as separate families, separate nations with competing interests, even separate planets alone in space.
Is the default setting almost.
It is. And this pervasive illusion of being separate, this denial of being one, ultimately makes us deny our own deepest truth, our interconnectedness. We ignore the obvious evidence: shared humanity, ecological interdependence, spiritual oneness, and we cling to these old ideas, these mental boxes that keep us divided, often causing huge problems.
Okay, let's really try and unpack this. Imagine a world where we actually lived as if we are all one. How would everything change? Our day-to-day lives, our big decisions?
Everything would shift. Social policies, political outcomes, religious views, economic choices, definitely. They'd be almost unrecognizable if we genuinely prioritize unity over separation, collaboration over competition.
The text argues we often feel so separate, even from the divine, from the source of life itself, that we doubt it even communicates with us.
Right, so we end up denying our own direct spiritual experiences, our inner knowing. We might deny the goodness, the compassion, the wisdom, the potential within us, basically denying the divine its expression through our own lives.
So this core illusion of separateness is maybe the biggest roadblock to human flourishing.
Arguably, yes. It stops us living in harmony not just with each other, but with our deepest, most authentic selves. It's this urgent call to dismantle the mental fences, the societal structures that keep division going, and just embrace the inherent, undeniable oneness of everything, moving from scarcity and conflict to abundance and co-creation.
And this illusion of being separate often shows up most clearly and most destructively in how we judge each other.
Yeah.
Which is exactly why letting go of judgment and embracing constant change is so vital for spiritual growth.
How does Conversations with God address that?
It points out how society's ideas of right and wrong aren't fixed at all. They're constantly shifting, evolving, often contradicting themselves across cultures and over time.
What was right 50 years ago might be seen as totally wrong now, and vice versa.
Exactly, which makes judging other people, especially by our own temporary standards, really problematic. Particularly when we, as the text says, require that others define themselves according to your terms. The text hammers home this undeniable truth about reality. Nothing stays the same. Everything is moving, changing, in flux. To resist change, to cling rigidly to old definitions or beliefs, is basically choosing to die, because all of life is motion.
So embracing change, being open to new truth, even if it shakes up our most cherished beliefs, is essential.
Absolutely essential for personal growth, for collective evolution, moving beyond the comfort zone of old limiting ideas. This perspective really pushes for radical openness to different ways of being, different paths, recognizing our current values aren't necessarily the ultimate ones. Growth speeds up massively when we're willing to question and maybe even change our deepest truths.
And building on that idea, the fluidity of truth, you have the Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. It introduces this powerful concept that shows how we internalize all those shifting judgments. The Book of Law, and that relentless inner judge living in our heads.
Oh yes, the judge.
This inner judge uses all the rules and beliefs we soaked up, through domestication by parents, teachers, religion, society, from when we were tiny, to constantly evaluate everything we do, don't do, think, feel. It's like this nonstop inner critic.
A running commentary of judgment.
Totally. And when we act against this deeply embedded book of law, the judge instantly finds us guilty, deserving punishment, shame, self-attack. It's this mental tyranny, a constant source of suffering and self-sabotage, an endless inner war.
So where's the power in the agreements then?
The transformative part is realizing they are just agreements, often born out of fear, not ultimate truth. And crucially, they can be broken. By consciously adopting the 4 new agreements, be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, always do your best. You generate enough personal power to basically dismantle that whole oppressive system of old fear-based agreements.
So you reclaim the power you were using to maintain the old system.
Exactly. Breaking those old agreements leads to real personal freedom, deep happiness, and an end to that internal suffering. It's recognizing that so much of our pain comes not from objective reality, but from the limiting stories we tell ourselves and the harsh judgments we dish out to ourselves and others.
And this theme of letting go of externals, looking inward for real spiritual freedom instead of outward, that's another powerful thread you find woven through so many wisdom traditions.
Like in the Dhammapada.
Exactly. The Dhammapada, the sayings of the Buddha, puts it so simply and directly. The recluse is not in externals. It's a profound critique of relying on superficial things for genuine spiritual progress, like just following precepts and rites, or piling up much learning for its own sake, or even thinking that finding a secluded lodging is the answer.
So true realization isn't about those outward things.
Not according to the Dhammapada, it's entirely internal. It's about inner detachment, profound freedom from what it calls preoccupying tendencies, those mental poisons, cravings, attachments that keep us trapped in suffering.
And it defines a true Brahman, a spiritually advanced person, not by externals like birth or ritual.
Right. But as someone in whom are not found longings for this world and for the beyond, without longing, released, who is without doubts due to understanding, who has attained the plunge into the deathless, who is free of sorrow, free of dust, pure. It describes this state of deep inner liberation, totally free from attachments, mental clutter, where ultimate wisdom has dissolved all doubts, leaving just pure expansive awareness.
That internal focus, being overdoing, finds such a beautiful ancient echo in the Tao Te Ching too. Lao Tzu introduces that concept of the great unity, seeing the whole world as Tao's own vessel, already perfect, complete, unchangeable.
The underlying cosmic principle.
Yeah. And the Tao, he says, does not favor one over the other. It's impartial. It nourishes and protects all creatures, yet does not claim lordship over them. No ego, no control. And crucially, it's most humble, dwelling in the lowest places, sustaining everything from underneath.
Which lines up perfectly with a non-judgmental, inclusive, inherently perfect view of reality. Everything's already as it should be.
So any attempt by us humans to grab hold and try to change things when the world is already perfection manifest is basically doomed to fail. It just creates disharmony.
That's the Taoist perspective. It leads to ruin. The sage, in this view, embodies this acceptance. They hold the block complete, embracing everything, preserving that great unity that can't be divided or ruled.
So it's a call to see the inherent perfection and connection in everything, to let go of our ego's need to control, manipulate, judge.
And instead, align ourselves with that humble, unifying, effortlessly flowing nature of existence itself. It's this profound invitation to find freedom and deep peace in acceptance, humility, and unity rather than always striving for external control or imposing our will.
Let's shift now to maybe the most crucial part of this whole spiritual journey. Moving beyond just, intellectual understanding or belief systems towards direct, felt knowing. Towards unmediated inner wisdom.
The experiential piece.
In Hesse Siddhartha, we see him have that profound realization after years of intense searching, studying with masters, experiencing worldly highs and lows. He finally understands there's nothing to be learned, just one knowledge. This is everywhere. This is Atman. This is within me and within you and within every creature.
And Atman being that universal self or soul, that divine spark within everything, identical in Hindu thought with Brahman, the ultimate reality.
Right. He realizes that the very desire to know it, then learning, is actually the biggest enemy of this inherent knowledge, because desire implies it's separate, something you have to get later.
Which is such a radical break from how we usually think about education or study.
Totally. It's about accessing this innate wisdom that's already there, fully formed inside us. And Ram Dass often talked about meeting people who just knew, not intellectually, but experientially.
Yeah, he described that universal feeling of searching for that knowing, even when, as he put it, everybody was very close, and we all knew we knew, but nobody quite knew how to articulate it or grasp it.
That longing for direct experience, for an undeniable knowing beyond words and concepts, it's such a powerful part of the spiritual quest. And it connects right back to the Gospel's call to seek first the kingdom of God, doesn't it?
Suggesting the kingdom isn't out there somewhere or a future reward.
But an inner realization, a massive shift from seeking about God to experiencing God within you right here, right now, recognizing the deepest answers aren't in books or lectures, but in the silent depths of our own being, just waiting for us to pay attention.
And this deep dive into inner knowing, this direct experience, is powerfully supported and nurtured by practices like mindfulness and presence. Eckhart Tolle, in The Power of Now, teaches that our constant psychological problems, our chronic suffering, actually stop when your attention is fully in the now.
How does that work? Why does the mind love problems so much?
He explains the mind unconsciously loves problems because they give it a strong, though false, sense of identity. We mentally chew on situations without any real intention to act, basically making these unresolved issues part of who we think we are.
So the goal is to pull consciousness back from the mind.
Exactly. to reclaim consciousness from the mind, to disidentify from the nonstop chatter, the conceptual frameworks, and instead to actually feel that subtle but always present inner energy field of the body, to transcend the purely physical by merging with this pure, vibrant feeling of being alive.
And this involves dealing with the pain body, too.
Yes, consciously disidentifying from what Tolle calls the pain body, which he describes as the living past in you. It's this energy field of accumulated, trapped emotional pain from past hurts that we often unconsciously resist healing because, tragically, it's become part of our identity.
So how do we break free?
By becoming the silent, non-judgmental watcher of our thoughts and emotions. By bringing conscious presence into our pain, we start to transmute it, freeing ourselves from the past's grip and opening up to the incredible freedom of the eternal present moment.
Pema Chodron, the Buddhist nun and teacher, echoes that need for presence so powerfully in time when things fall apart. She emphasizes mindfulness as being one with our experience, not dissociating.
Fully present with whatever comes up.
Yeah, whether it's just the feeling of your hand on a doorknob or really tough feelings, sadness, anger, fear, confusion, just being with it. And she stresses that renunciation is essential.
But not renouncing the world itself.
No, not turning away from life, renouncing our habitual mental patterns, those deep-seated, often unconscious assumptions that keep us stuck in suffering cycles.
Like what kind of patterns?
Believing in a solid, separate self, constantly chasing pleasure and running from pain, blaming others for our problems. She says we need to get totally fed up with those patterns because they lead nowhere.
Dead ends.
Exactly. And Chodron points out that the process of becoming unstuck is so hard because it demands we completely change our way of perceiving reality, like altering our psychological DNA. It shatters the false hope that we can hide from our experience.
Oh, it invites us to bravely sit with restlessness, discomfort, the unknown.
Precisely. And through practices like Tonglen, to actually transform pain into joy by breathing in suffering and breathing out care for everyone. It's a call for deep honesty, radical kindness, and taking unwavering responsibility for being fully present and engaged in this messy, unpredictable world.
There's another really powerful ancient path to cultivating this inner wisdom, one that also prioritizes direct experience over just thinking about it, the practice of unceasing prayer and inner stillness. You see this beautifully described in that anonymous 19th century Russian classic, The Way of a Pilgrim.
Yes, the pilgrim's journey.
His whole quest is for unceasing prayer, and eventually discovers it's the most essential thing of all union with God. But this isn't just saying words by rote or thinking pious thoughts.
It's more like a constant inner conversation, an absorption in God's presence.
Exactly. Permeating every single moment of waking life. The text explains that the name of Jesus Christ invoked in prayer contains self-existing and self-acting beneficent powers, suggesting there's a profound inherent power in the sacred name itself.
And the advice given to the pilgrim is key, isn't it?
Absolutely. Don't get troubled by impurity or aridity, those times of distraction, doubt, or just feeling nothing in prayer. But patiently wait for the fruits, trusting in that inherent self-acting power of invoking the divine name. It's about persistence. Understanding that constant mindful prayer is the only way to achieve pure, true prayer. The most authentic way to prepare for salvation, not through your own effort, but through divine grace that comes through this consistent practice. It goes way beyond intellectual understanding. It becomes a living internal reality that reshapes your whole consciousness.
And crucially, that practice in the way of a pilgrim also involves guarding the intellect, right? Achieving a constant state of stillness of the mind, which is unbroken, even by thoughts that appear to be good.
That sounds counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Even good thoughts break the stillness.
Apparently so. It's not passive emptiness. It's described as active internal warfare against all distractions, all mental chatter, even seemingly holy thoughts. The goal is to keep the mind totally empty of internal dialogue.
Why? What's the danger?
To prevent subtle self-deception or even darker influences from hiding in the mental noise. To ensure a pure, unmediated, direct connection with the divine. This takes immense diligence, vigilantly watching over the intellect. The idea is that the divine body, received in communion, then increasingly illuminates the mind like the stars, leading to deeper insight.
So it's a rigorous internal discipline for purification.
Exactly. Purifying heart and mind, preparing the soul for profound union with God. Transcending natural light, natural feelings, ordinary understanding to receive a divine light beyond all human grasp. This is the purification needed for the soul to become, as they say, God by participation, totally assimilated into the divine essence, echoing what many mystics teach.
William James, always the keen observer of human experience, offers a really compelling perspective on direct spiritual experience, especially conversion, in the varieties of religious experience.
How does he describe it?
He notes these profound inner shifts often feel like a real, definite, and memorable event. The person often feels like a passive spectator, watching a process being performed upon him from above, or maybe from within, by a power greater than themselves.
Highlighting how sudden and unbidden these experiences can feel, less like something you did, more like something you received.
Exactly. And what's really striking is James's focus on the intuitive perception of the sense and spirit of religious doctrine. This can happen, he says, without having any knowledge of the letter of religious doctrine. It completely bypasses intellectual study or dogma.
He uses that analogy of someone born blind suddenly seeing daylight.
Yes, a powerful analogy. Such a person sees but cannot define the light which bathes him. They feel hidden things by their inexplicable effects on the soul rather than understanding them logically or intellectually.
Which speaks directly to that non-dogmatic encounter with truth, where spiritual reality is felt, experienced at this deep, intuitive, undeniable level, not just reasoned out or learned from outside.
It suggests these profound shifts aren't always down to conscious effort. They can be a grace, a sudden insight that bypasses the rational mind, leaving an undeniable sense of truth and transformation that reshapes your whole being.
Okay, so after this amazing journey through radical love, inner revolution, unity, direct knowing, how do we actually, bring these profound ideas into our everyday lives? What's the practical wisdom here?
It often comes down to a profound, almost paradoxical shift,
With
moving from doing to being. Conversations with God puts it simply, there's nothing we have to do.
Now, wait, that sounds potentially counterintuitive, maybe even irresponsible, or just lazy.
Right, it sounds that way at first, but it's crucial to grasp it doesn't mean you stop having things or doing things. It radically shifts where they come from, their origin.
Okay, explain that. From striving to become something.
To coming from already being that thing, that quality, that state you desire. It's a massive life-changing shift in consciousness. From scarcity, I need to get this, to abundance, I already am this. It completely flips how most of us are conditioned to live. Let's make it really concrete. Instead of doing things in order to become happy or wise or loving.
You do things because you are happy, because you are wise, because you are loved.
Exactly. When you operate from a state of being, everything turns around. Your actions flow naturally, effortlessly, authentically from an inner state of joy, wisdom, love that's already there inside you.
So you stop chasing external stuff, achievements, relationships, possessions, hoping they'll bring happiness.
Right. Instead, you create from an overflow. The text calls it the divine dichotomy. The way to get there is to be there. You simply are where you choose to get. It sounds simple, but it's profoundly challenging.
You want happiness, be happy, embody it authentically. Want wisdom, be wise, let that inner knowing guide you. Want love, be love, act from that compassionate core.
And the text suggests this is who you are anyway, your beloved self, your true spiritual essence. This shift frees us from that endless treadmill of striving, of needing external validation. Instead, we live authentically from our deepest truth, bringing out our inherent divine qualities. It's not a journey of getting something new, but of remembering and expressing what's already there.
And the shift from doing to being connects perfectly with the idea of authentic power, which Gary Zukav describes so well. Authentic power, Zukav says, isn't about controlling people or situations or external shows of force. It's something you earn step by step, choice by choice, by consciously aligning yourself with the energy of your soul.
He contrasts that with striving for artificial needs, right?
Exactly. Artificial needs are those external forms of power and security driven by fear. We chase them to feel better about ourselves, feel safe, get approval. Things like wealth, just for wealth's sake, status, validation from others, control. When we pursue those, Zukav says, a frightened, unevolved part of our personality is in charge. We get anxiously attached to having those needs met, leading to constant struggle and never feeling satisfied.
But in stark contrast, when you consciously choose to fulfill your authentic needs, you're actively creating authentic power.
And what are authentic needs?
They come from a loving, compassionate, wise part of your personality aligned with your soul's journey. And they always aim to generate authentic power, which is inherently good and life-affirming. Examples would be spiritual growth, the deep desire to co-create for the common good, that fundamental human need to love and be loved, the urge to contribute meaningfully to life itself.
So the universe actually helps us with this.
According to Zukav, yes. It responds to our choices. bringing up whatever internal stuff we need to face, challenge, and release, allowing us to build authentic power from the inside out. So embracing our deepest spiritual desires, the ones that serve life, connection, evolution, is the only path to true, lasting, meaningful power. Power that isn't taken from others, but generated from within, in harmony with our soul and the greater good. It empowers, it doesn't dominate.
Now, let's touch on a really profound piece of practical wisdom from the Four Agreements, one that can totally change how we look at living: the initiation of the dead.
Sounds intense.
It's metaphorical.
I,
It means taking death itself as our wisest teacher so we can be truly vibrantly alive right now. The unavoidable awareness that we don't know when we'll die, that life is finite, precious, that should fundamentally alter how we live each day.
it should make us use every moment to be happy, to do what we really enjoy doing.
Exactly. Instead of always putting joy off, living in fear, waiting for someday, which might never come. If you knew you only had a week left, or even just a day, would you waste it trying to please others, worrying what they think, fulfilling expectations that aren't really you?
Probably not. You'd instinctively choose to be myself.
Right. Free from all those crippling external pressures and fears, this perspective just liberates you from the tyranny of other people's opinions, the fear of not measuring up. You can just embrace who you authentically are. And when you really embrace this initiation, let the awareness of impermanence guide you, you realize that love in action only produces happiness. Love will give you inner peace. This transformed way of living changes how you see everything. It lifts the fog in your mind, that haze of fear, doubt, judgment, and replaces it with crystal clarity, profound, unshakable joy.
Happiness is described as the lost paradise.
Yeah, the state humanity's been searching for, often looking in all the wrong directions. And crucially, it's seen as the future of humanity, a potential collective consciousness we can reach. By taking death as a teacher, befriending our own mortality, we shed the fear that holds us back and step into a life of authentic joy, inner peace, unconditional love, which is really the good news made real in our daily lives. Choosing consciously to be present, love fiercely, live fully, knowing every moment is a precious, finite gift.
And finally, we land on that profound, sometimes difficult understanding of suffering as growth. M. Scott Peck nails this in The Road Less Traveled.
What's his take?
He repeats that the suffering of changing is an inherent, unavoidable, and actually necessary part of all real growth, whether it's good parenting, effective therapy, or deep spiritual evolution.
So it's not about self-sacrifice for its own sake or being a martyr.
Not at all. It's recognizing that evolving, learning, expanding our awareness inevitably involves discomfort, challenges, pain. Just like good parents have to be willing to change and grow with their kids, constantly adjusting attitudes, methods, expectations. We have to embrace the suffering that comes with our own personal and spiritual development.
And if we're unwilling to risk that suffering, always taking the easy path.
Peck warns, that's choosing the path of senility, stagnation, a hardening of the spirit, being effectively left behind by life's dynamic unfolding process. The challenges we face, the difficulties, the discomfort of shedding old patterns, they aren't just roadblocks to avoid. They're the very crucibles of transformation, the forge where deeper understanding, greater compassion, and ultimately a more expansive, authentic, vibrant life gets created.
Wow.
It's by willingly engaging with our discomfort, not running from it, that we truly evolve.
Yeah.
Hashtag outro, y'all.
Wow, what an incredible, really profound journey we've been on together through all these timeless wisdom traditions. So what does it all boil down to for us right here, right now? We've seen how these beep messages, whether they come straight from the ancient gospels or echo through diverse traditions over centuries, they're truly a radical call. Not just for us to think about, but for a fundamental transformation of our inner world and then, naturally, our relationships with everything.
It's a call to love unconditionally, isn't it? Extending compassion even to those we see as enemies, and changing ourselves in doing so.
Yeah, and that profound invitation to surrender the small, fearful ego, to embrace an inner revolution that really cleans out self-will and attachment.
We explored that undeniable, transformative truth of unity, pushing us to move past destructive separation and judgment.
And ultimately, it's a call to a living, breathing, experiential faith, a direct, unmediated encounter with inner wisdom, cultivating mindfulness, finding inner stillness, developing that intuitive sense of truth that goes beyond just intellect.
So it's not just about following rules or doctrines or going through rituals.
No. It's an active, ongoing process of becoming. A profound shift in our whole existence. From striving to be something, to simply being the love, the wisdom, the unity we were looking for all along.
And if we connect all these amazing insights to the bigger picture, Maybe the deepest truth here isn't just what we believe about a spiritual path or which label we wear. It's about how completely, how courageously we're willing to actually become the love and unity the path asks of
That
us.
really brings it home.
It truly raises an important and very personal question for each of us listening. What personal agreements, what ingrained judgments, what cherished attachments, or what parts of your own self-will might you be ready to surrender right now, ready to willingly let die, so you can truly live the good news in your own life?
Hmm.
To walk this path is really to engage with life as this continuous chance for profound transformation. Recognizing our inner state creates our outer reality dynamically, and that our greatest freedom lies in our willingness to answer that radical call to love and unity.
That is a truly powerful and provocative thought to carry with you after this deep dive. We really hope this exploration has given you some new insights, maybe sparked some fresh perspectives, and encouraged you to keep going on your own personal, profound deep dive into these timeless spiritual truths. Keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the wisdom that's right here within you and all around you.